NXT Great American Bash. Let's talk about it. From June 12th, 2024. It was kind of dark in there in center stage. I wish they'd have turned the lights on. I know it's a small building, but I would have liked for the lights to be on the crowd so we can see. I'm not necessarily a big fan of the darkened crowd. I know that that's a Triple H thing. He loves not lighting the crowd. I like lighting the crowd. I want to see the crowd. Even if the building is small, I want to see the crowd. They might have signs or something. It might look better. It's brighter. My God, why does it have to be dark all the time? So I'm going to go through this show in order because it was a very bizarre show considering the NXT Championship match was not the main event. The main event was the women's tag team match. So Mariah May, a.k.a. Blake Monroe, her debut was the main event. But we started the show with Jasper Troy versus Javon Evans. Now, a very simple story here. Okay match, by the way. Very simple story of Jasper Troy being big and dominant. He's got very simple offense. Javon Evans has injured ribs, limiting his comeback, but he's still taking chances with dives and springboards and such. The goofy part, because there's always a goofy part in modern matches, is that he's trying to German suplex Jasper Troy. He ends up trying to German suplex him twice before finally nailing it on the third one. It was okay. The big finish came from Jasper Troy trying to hit the black hole slam, which Javon Evans counters into a roll-up. So Javon Evans basically steals the win, and Jasper Troy tries to get him after the match, but your boy bouncy, and he bounced right on out. So this was what it needed to be. Javon Evans won, and he won in a slick way that didn't bury Jasper Troy. Man, Jasper Troy can't continue to lose like this. I know he's a rookie, and he's very young, but with that size, you don't want people to lose faith in him and start thinking he's basically just a gigantic jabroni. But right now, he is basically just kind of a generic giant. I'm thinking they're not done with what they want to do with him yet. So hopefully this all works out in the end. The next matchup was actually very good. Sol Ruca versus Izzy Dame for the Women's North American Championship. Of course, Sol Ruca won with the Soul Snatcher. So part of this match was Zarya and Tatum Paxley getting into it where Paxley slapped Zarya early, and that led to some confusion outside the ring. Izzy Dame took advantage by hitting her finisher, and the referee was distracted by the goings-on outside the ring and actually missed the pin. This was very early in the match. This set up a very long heat for Izzy Dame, and Sol Ruca being able to use her explosiveness and her athleticism as far as her comeback, which is smart, is really good. The 1 foot moonsault by Sol Ruca, where she jumped off the ring post with 1 foot and ended up kneeing Izzy Dame right in the chin. It was crazy. Izzy Dame actually used Tessa Blanchard's finisher Magnum, which was pretty cool. They called it a code breaker, but she dived from the second rope. So I know Magnum is from the top rope, so this is basically the same move. Sol Ruca ended up countering a move from the top rope and landed on her feet. Man, that girl is something else. Paxley, of course, continued to interfere before she ended up getting speared by Zarya. And this leads us to an attempt for Izzy Dame to take advantage of Sol Ruca being distracted by Paxley. Except Izzy Dame missed the lariat. When she turned around, she walked right into a soul snatcher, a springboard from the middle of the rope variation. 1, 2, 3. Sol Ruca remains the Women's North American Champion. Izzy Dame loses. It's possible they're going to blame this loss on Tatum Paxley. And Pax is already she's welcomed into the culling, but she's already making mistakes. She's going to come across like a weak link eventually. I'm wondering where we're going from here and how long Paxley is going to be in this group. Because sometimes these groups last forever. Sometimes they don't last long at all. Again, Patsy was a babyface before this whole thing started, and now they kind of have turned her heel to put her with Izzy Dame, but she's not really a heel as much as she likes to help her friends, and right now Izzy Dame is her friend, so she's trying to help Izzy Dame. So there's that. Izzy Dame is really showing a lot of potential. I like Izzy Dame. I wish she wasn't in the culling because I don't want her to be anywhere near Shawn Spears, but she's coming along quite nicely, I think, when it comes to Izzy. Sol Ruka did a interview where she talked about her and Zarya, how they shouldn't have been tag teaming this long, and she was right. I think the plan was for them to break up a long time ago, but people really like them together on TikTok. So they're keeping storylines together because of people on TikTok. Stop this. Zarya needs to get out of this storyline. It is killing her. It's killing her dead. Now all they do is gay baiting pictures and gay baiting TikToks, and they got dual merchandise, for God's sakes. They stuck together. This is the disaster. This has killed Zarya. TikTok has killed Zarya. Zarya could be a top woman in this division at this point in time, but because she had too much fun in some TikTok videos, she's stuck doing this shit. Now she's a lackey for Sol Ruka. That's, goddamn it. What a disaster. What a mistake. TikTok is a mistake. We are all in error. Next. Ricky Starks versus Ethan Page, Falls Count Anywhere, the men's North American Championship. You know, this match was something else. This was probably the most impressive Ethan Page match I've ever seen. It's more than likely the best Ethan Page match I've ever seen. How they made it feel realistic as they traveled from place to place, whether it's backstage or into the bar area or the concession stands or the office rooms. You know, it felt a lot like something from the Attitude Era, where they would just wander. Yes, they used a lot of the plunder, you know, the ring post, not the ring post, the barricade, you know, chairs, etc. But it was mostly the brawling around the building that I really enjoyed. And since it's a small building, I'm pretty sure the fans were not missing a whole lot. And then you had the environmental stuff, you know. For instance, they were backstage and they Ricky Starks bumped into Jasper Troy, and he got slammed on top of a crate, a box or some type of thing, and that's of course going to lead to something later, no doubt, where Ricky Starks is probably going to have to find Jasper Troy and he's going to beat him up next. But when Ricky Starks jumped on that, I think it was like a pipe or something, a garter or something, and kicked Ethan Page in the face. You know, them fighting up the ramp. Ricky Starks doing a tornado DDT off the referee. Like, he kicked off the referee while he was on the ramp. And the big finish was the Razor's Edge off the ramp through a table. Again, a table where there was no person and there's nobody there. Why would you set a table right there? Anyway, Ethan Page won the match, which I was surprised by, because why is Ethan Page this guy? Like, why is he winning these matches? What's this about? Obviously, I'm shook that Ricky Starks lost. Very surprised that Ethan Page won. This had to be the blow-off match to their feud. Hopefully, this means Ricky Starks goes forward, and he ends up being one of the guys that wrestles Obafemi next, because I might as well just talk about it now. And Ethan Page could just hang out with the Evolve guys and continue grooming them and basically being the big brother to these guys. He's like an alumni from the Varsity Project. But this was very good. You know, it was a very good match. I highly suggest people go and watch it if you're into professional wrestling. There was a very long contract signing segment. There's nothing to talk about here, really, except after these guys said all they had to say to each other, they put Trick Williams through a table. There were some Dark State shenanigans as well. Nobody cares about Dark State. It's over. Ava then decided that Mike Santana, Joe Hendry, and Trick Williams had to fight Dark State on NXT in a 6-man tag. Now, why would you do this? Why would you do that? I didn't like that this Slammiversary contract signing was even here. They should have done it on TV rather than doing it on a Great American Bash show. You only got so much time to dedicate this much time to one segment. That's not even a WWE segment, not even an NXT segment. 2/3 of this segment is for TNA. You know, if you can give away CW TV for this, but maybe not pay-per-view. But I get that they wanted to promote TNA, and I'm sure that's very nice of them. The only good thing that came out of this is when Trick called himself the best TNA champion, there was an AJ Styles chant that broke out that he ended up yelling about, which was, I think, pretty fun. But otherwise, this was a waste of time, and I don't see the need for this. The fourth match on the show, Obafemi defeats Yoshiki Inamura to retain the NXT Championship. I saw a lot of people, they were very excited about this match. I was not. I don't care about this Inamura guy. I really don't. His offense is fine. The tackle that he does is pretty good. You know, the wind-up power slam that he does is pretty good. The charged-up flying splash, solid. But I'm not emotionally attached to his character. I didn't believe that he was going to win this match, nor did I want him to. There was nothing about this match that I felt was really engaging. And I completely understand why it wasn't the main event. He's not a main event guy. You know, he shouldn't be in this spot. I have been railing against this Inamura thing for a month now. Enough of this shit. This is killing NXT. You know, you can, this is, of course, because it's NXT, you can experiment. And Inamura is an experiment, and some people are liking him. I don't. I don't think that Inamura is worth the experiment. When you got Tavion Heights and Miles Bourne on this roster, when you just sent Idris Inoue to Evolve, come on. Why are we dealing with this guy? I mean, again, I get it. The Noah partnership, you want to give them something. You want to give this guy something because some of the fans like the portly, chubby, funny Japanese guy. I don't. I think this is a waste of Obafemi's time. I don't like this. I think this was part of the reason why there was not a lot of excitement about Great American Bash, is because nobody thought this guy could win and nobody wanted him to win. You know? Nobody really wanted this guy to beat Obafemi. The story of this match is that Josh Briggs kept interfering. He hit Obafemi in the back of the head with the belt, and he kept telling Inamura to take advantage, and Inamura was trying to be honorable and upright and not do things the way Briggs wanted him to do it. And then eventually Briggs gets knocked off the apron by Obafemi, and eventually all of this leads to a power bomb, and Obafemi wins. After the match, Obafemi basically was giving Inamura his props, and Inamura showed up to apologize for Briggs' interference in the match. And Briggs showed up to yell at Oba, and Oba and Briggs started yelling at each other, and they had to be separated. And I was like, damn, Briggs is a bum too. Can we find some non-bums? Can I write for Obafemi, please? I will write Obafemi's storyline personally. I have a really good idea, and it came from something that I saw as a kid that I really liked. And I'll give you an example. I'll give it to you right now. It's a free game, all right? When Ken Shamrock won the King of the Ring, right? They did a thing where Ken Shamrock beat other Kings of the Ring, and he was kind of the King of Kings sort of thing. This is when they brought back, I believe he beat Owen Hart, and I think he beat Mabel, because he was the King of the Ring in 1997 or 8. I think it was 97. And, of course, Mabel was King of the Ring in 1995. And they were trying to build up Ken Shamrock, and they wanted him to be like a big deal. So they had him beat a couple of former King of the Rings. And one of them was Mabel. He beat Giant Mabel by submission. And it didn't go anywhere, clearly. But I always liked that idea, you know? And I was saying, like, what if Obafemi, in order to be the best NXT champion of all time, he challenges former NXT champions? There's still some floating around. You know, Andrade is one, Gargano, Ciampa, Carmelo Hayes, Trick Williams. There's a couple of guys he could challenge that are still active and who aren't really in storylines right now. Maybe even Bo Dallas, because he's still floating around. There are some guys that are above his station, like Seth Rollins. He's like, challenge Seth Rollins or Sami Zayn. Like, those guys are a little, those are sort of top level, upper card guys. You're not going to just make an open challenge for them at an NXT show. But the idea of him being like the ultimate NXT champion, going along and being the best, as him challenging guys who, quite frankly, some of whom have gotten better, some of them have kind of fell off, but him trying to prove that he's better than all the former NXT champions, challenging guys like Karrion Kross and Shinsuke Nakamura and stuff like that, could be fun. And it could be like a rotating group of opponents where, no, none of these guys are NXT normal talent, but he doesn't have to rub shoulders with Josh Briggs and Yoshiki fucking Inamura. Now, I would prefer if he was fighting, Charlie Dempsey and Tavion Heights and guys like that. I would prefer that. But if you can't do that for whatever reason, maybe these guys are tied up in storylines, maybe there's other ideas, then I would go somewhere else with that. But I certainly wouldn't have Obafemi scraping the very bottom of the barrel to wrestle Yoshiki Inamura. I know I'm burying this guy, but fuck him. Next, the main event of the evening, Blake Monroe, aka Mariah May, and Jordan Grace defeat Fallon Henley and JC Jane. The surprising bit about this is that JC Jane took the pin from Mariah May with a double arm DDT. JC Jane and Fallon Henley actually lost on TNA TV. They lost to Masha Slamovich and I think Lei Yang Lee, who is Xia Li in WWE. So this was not really even a surprise that they would lose again. But Fallon Henley was the one who took the pin in TNA, so there was that. The match was okay. I don't know if it was worthy of the main event spot. It was alright. I liked the spinning sidewalk slam that Mariah May did. I thought that was pretty good. We got a cameo from Masha Slamovich, who showed up wearing her belt, because you wouldn't know who she was if she didn't have her belt on. She might as well wear a fucking name tag. Hi, my name is Masha. Have you ever heard of me? No. But she came out to attack Jasmine Nix, who kept interfering in this match. JC Jane and Fallon Henley end up hitting it was like a knee kick combination that they hit, and that was only a 2 count. I was very surprised by that. JC Jane tried to attack Jordan Grace, and Jordan Grace hit her with a European uppercut. This turned JC Jane around, and she got caught in a double arm DDT and pinned right then and there. So she is, of course, the most beatable NXT Women's Champion of all time. And to be quite honest, after seeing JC Jane get pinned by Mariah May, I am now going to change my mind. And I think JC Jane is going to beat Jordan Grace. I just can't imagine she's going to lose 2 times in a row, back-to-back nights. And matter of fact, 3 times. Because she would have lost on TNA, lost here at the Great American Bash, and lost at Evolution 3 times in 1 week. I don't think that they're going to do that. So I'm going to change my mind. And I think JC Jane is actually going to beat Jordan Grace. It may be one of those weird 3-on-1 situations that Fatal Influence like to do, but that's the most sensible way to get out of that match. And get to JC Jane versus Masha Slamovich, because that seems to be where they're headed based off of TNA storylines. And TNA storylines don't quite spoil WWE, but the angle started with Masha Slamovich and JC Jane. And I haven't seen anything that suggests it's going to be anything else other than Masha Slamovich and JC Jane. There hasn't been, I don't think, any conversation about Jordynne Grace on TNA. I don't think she hasn't made an appearance on the show. They haven't even talked. Oh, I think Jordynne Grace may have mentioned it on WWE TV that she's going to beat JC Jane and win the title Knockouts belt at Slammiversary. But other than that, Jordynne Grace has not been involved in this storyline at all. So now I'm thinking they're just going to use Jordynne Grace as a stepping stone for JC Jane, even though my heart is telling me that JC Jane is just a transitional champion. But I'm seeing out of my eye holes is that they're building something with her. The internal feud between her and Fallon Henley is going to blow up eventually. You have the, of course, inevitable. Now that she's been pinned by Mariah May, she's in the conversation for the women's title. And Mariah May and Jordynne Grace being tag team partners, well, you could always branch them off. So you don't necessarily have to have JC Jane drop the belt to Jordynne Grace. So there's a lot of things going on here. There's a lot of options that they got that they didn't have before. But all intents and purposes, everything is telling me that JC Jane is going to be a transitional champion. But at the same time, they want to establish her. Because right now, she's only beaten Lainey Reed, and that's it. I don't think she's won any other match. So I'm thinking she's probably going to win at Evolution now. I'm very interested in seeing where they go with this. The TNA element really tells me that JC Jane is going to win the title, though. It's going to maintain that championship. And she lost to Masha Slamovich a couple of months ago. And maybe trying to get her to avenge that loss. But I could see the idea that if they decide to go that way, the TNA fans that are remaining, the TNA onlys, which there can't be that many of them at this point, they're going to absolutely burn everything down. If another NXT talent is walking around with a TNA championship, they're going to burn everything down. But NXT could lose their championship, and then they could say, well, it's equal because Trick won the world title of TNA, so Masha Slamovich can win the women's championship of NXT, and that would be equal. Of course, that would be. I'm not thinking that Trick Williams is going to be champion much longer for TNA. I'm thinking Slammiversary is probably going to end up being it for him. We'll see as storylines progress, but we're looking at right now maybe JC dropping the belt to either Jordynne Grace or Mariah May. I don't think she's going to drop it to Masha Slamovich. So whoever wins that match at Evolution, it's probably going to be a double champion. And it's probably going to end up being JC Jane. As I talk my way through this, it might end up being JC Jane walking around with two belts. And there's going to be a lot of angry people. I can't wait. I hope that happens. We all deserve it. Weird things need to happen in wrestling. And JC Jane being the beneficiary of weird things and nobody dying is great. So, I like that. But NXT, Great American Bash, this show was a souped up regular episode of NXT. A lot of the matches, nobody told Ethan Page and Ricky Starks this is just basically a souped up episode of NXT because they went out there and killed it. Same thing with Javon Evans and Jasper Troy. Same thing for the tag team, the main event. They did a really good job too. I don't feel like it was a pay-per-view main event, but I think they did a really good job. Ultimately, though, none of these matches felt like the biggest match that you could possibly have. And if the point was to counter program All In, I don't think this did enough because there wasn't enough in terms of angles and sizzle to the steak to get you to watch this over the biggest wrestling show possible on that day. 25,000 people in Dallas. I don't think you did enough with your 750 in Atlanta to take away from that. And you certainly could have, put more effort into it, and you might have done a lot better. That being said, though, there was a lot of television on WWE, and a lot of this stuff, the purpose of it was to feed Evolution. So Raw, SmackDown, Great American Bash, all of it was, you put strategic women's storylines in strategic places, and those storylines will be a small part of Raw, a small part of SmackDown, a small part of Great American Bash, a small part of Saturday's Main Event, but it's a bigger part of Evolution. So if that was the goal, was to increase the interest in the match in Evolution, I think they did a good job there. And it depends on who wins the Battle Royal. For instance, if Blake Monroe wins the Battle Royal, let's say, or somebody like that, that could be interesting. So it depends on what the expected outcome for WWE was. But for me, this was a souped up episode of NXT. It wasn't nothing too special, but at least 2 of these matches were very good, and I say go out and watch those. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll talk to you good people later. Peace out.
Yeah. We're just gonna